Bienvenue dans le podcast DNVR Avalanche. Piggy et Rudo discutent de la intersaison. How'd I do?
Did great.
Talking off season once again on the DNVR Avalanche podcast. Look, no one's making any secrets about it. The Avs obviously have a lot to cover this offseason, ranging from 2C to depth to cap management, all the way to power play coach. So they have a lot to do. And as much as everyone would like to get all of that done all at once and just be done with it, the reality of an offseason is you got to take it piece by piece, part by part, and figure out what the game plan is. And obviously not all of that is going to be laid out and go according to plan E, but how complex is an offseason plan like this? How much of this has a grand design from the front office, and how much of this is adapting on the fly?
Well, a little bit of everything, right? But you're talking about guys that have seen everything in C-Mac and Joe, and like they've been around. Kevin McDonald, they've been through rebuilds, they've been through retools, they've been through whatever the term you want to use. The Avalanche have been in this position before. What's the most important thing? How do we go about it? And look no further than last summer. The restrictions were a little different because we talk about it all the time. It was about Val and Gabe, and where now this is all about how do we go about it? Because we don't have restrictions, but we don't have draft capital. We don't have, so how do we go about it? What's the most important thing? And I think the Avalanche probably went away a little bit once the season ended. When I say went away, it's like, go gather your thoughts for a couple weeks and then get back. And they've probably been at it now. They probably have a plan in place. Where is the most important thing? And I'm assuming that's something we'll talk about today. Where are the areas that we feel is, because it's kind of a trickling down effect, right? Domino effect. I think, one thing needs to go, and then the other part needs to go afterwards, or whatever it is. And I think that they do have a plan in place. On top of UFA, which is July 1st, and then obviously your restricted guys and all that kind of stuff. But are they going to go big game hunting? I think part of the plan is all part of what they're putting together right now, and then they're going to start attacking, or they've already started attacking what they're trying to do, i.e. Brock Nelson, or are they going trying to re-sign him? Are they not? Do they feel that they can be done? And those are things that, for example, Nelson, like, you'll know before July 1st.
Yeah,
if
of course.
you know what I mean. Like, it's not Joe Sakic 2001 after won the cup, and like, where's this going? It goes till midnight, or Gabe Landeskog, or this is a guy that was a rental, maybe not. And I think that they probably know, they probably have a gauge right now of where this is going with them, and if they think they can meet it or not, or he really has no interest and he's going somewhere else, and then they can, look somewhere else and start having plan for something else.
Before we dive into the actual topics, I do want to hit a couple of these things in chat here. First, Max asking, I would love to hear the crew and chat's thoughts on John Tavares as a 2 to 3 year option around $6 million for your 2C. He doesn't have the feet for the Avs play style, but he's wicked smart. Yeah, for $2 million or for $6 million, I would love John Tavares. John Tavares is going to get paid more than $6 million by a lot. I know he's not young, 34, but he's coming off of a season where he was essentially a point per game player and scored 38 goals. Guys like that don't get paid $6 million. Definitely not going to be that type of affordable option for the Avs. Again, the Avs should be looking into everything. If he makes it to free agency, or if he becomes available, you have to consider those options, but I think it's a tough fit for Tavares. Granted, I was saying they should go after Marner the other day. So maybe there is a world where they see Tavares as a 2C. Maybe he wants like 7-5 or something to come play in Colorado. I don't think that's the case. I would be surprised if that was the case. But if the price is right, the Avs should definitely be looking at someone like that. I do think that you are correct, though. He doesn't stylistically make a ton of sense in Colorado's system, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on JT?
Yeah, I mean, he's my yeah, again, people are gonna jump on me for saying this. He's, for example, my Ryan O'Reilly in the sense that they don't have the best feet, but they're smart players.
Yep.
And yeah, like, is Ryan really an Avalanche today? No, stylistically, I'm talking about. But would I love to have him at the trade deadline? Yes, you know what I mean. So, I think Tavares. It's a great name. It's a great. He's a good player. Sounds like he's staying in Toronto or wants to stay in Toronto from what he was saying. At the exit interviews there, 48 hours ago, whatever it was. Um, who knows what you see and what you hear and what reality is? I don't know. But this is the guy that played outside of his hometown for many years. And when his, UFA freedom, whatever you want to call that, chose to go back home where he's from in Toronto. And now that he got kids and the kids are growing up, like, is it, something that he's going to look forward to, which is to go in a US market in the Midwest? Probably not. You know what I mean? You would think that his choice number one would be to stay in Toronto. Sounds like Marner's, they're going to move on. I mean, again, who knows? But it sounds like Marner's days are done in Toronto. So you would think that they would be able to sit with Tavares and have him back. It sounds like they liked him, and he had a productive year, and he's a good fit there. So, but it's a good name. I mean, I wouldn't spit on that. Absolutely. I mean, I like John Tavares. He's a good player.
So how do you take a John Tavares conversation? And then I'm going to throw some other names that were in the chat at you here. We've obviously heard a lot in the media about the, let's call it a schism, whatever you want to call it, between Marco Rossi and the Minnesota Wild. His playing time in the playoffs there, and maybe being a little bit questionable about how much money he wants. And then you also had someone mentioning Mason McTavish as potentially someone you could pry out of the Ducks. As the Avalanche, how do you approach that? Looking at some young, productive players that maybe have upside, as opposed to a John Tavares of extreme veteran, very experienced. When you're looking at trying to retool or whatever you want to call it around your core, should you be looking for those young players, or do you lean a little bit more toward those vets?
Yeah, I think it's more like who's available, right? I
Sure.
think I think beggars can be choosing, right? It's you're talking about Tavares, way different than a Mason McTavish. Yeah, I mean, I don't think. Again, I could be wrong. I don't think McTavish is going anywhere. Especially with, Joel Quenneville. I know, like, likes that type of player.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I would be surprised. Again, I like Mason McTavish. I would love for him to be an Avalanche. I love the name. I love the thought. Um, but when you're going to get, like you just said, older rather than younger, well, there's a price to pay, right? You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, a guy like Tavares would be free, and a guy like McTavish, well, I don't know how you can get to him. First of all, the Avalanche don't have the draft picks to make offer sheets. You have to have your own draft picks, and they don't have them. Um, or you have to get assets and trade that. Right now, they don't really. And again, unless you're trading one of your top four Ds for a guy like that, and I'd be surprised that the Ducks would do that. But that's kind of where the dilemma is this summer for CMAC and company, because it's not that simple, of and I know everyone's talking about it around the league. It's so funny, like Matthew Nyes and just offer sheet him. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, oh, okay, yeah. That doesn't mean again. Everything's got to align right for offer sheets, right? You know what I mean? And then it's not that easy. And then the player has to jump in it. The player has to be in it. But then the team, obviously, Edmonton was a little different last year. They didn't have, like, they were stuck, you know what I mean? And that's why they got offer sheeted. That was a little bit of maybe a missed opportunity by them to protect themselves. But you got to remember, Teams like Toronto, they're protecting themselves right now against them. Whatever you call that, Matthew Nyes offer sheet. They'll be ready to go, and
Yeah,
there's no way they're not
he's
matching
staying.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would agree.
yeah,
But the point we're getting into here is why this is such a complicated order of operations in this offseason, right?
it
Because
is.
if the Avs just want to keep Brock Nelson as 2C, great. They can just go sign him tomorrow if they come to an agreement on a number. But if the Avs want Marco Rossi, okay, well, now they need to figure out what Minnesota wants. And then maybe they need to make moves to get what Minnesota wants so they can make that move with Minnesota. Look at a couple of years ago when they moved Alex Newhook, got some picks that they then flipped for Ross Colton. It gets really complicated really fast when you're talking about these moves one after the other and chaining things together on what the Avs want to and need to do this offseason. And to be honest, we have to start. I titled this show, What Should Be the First Acquisition, not Who Should Be the First Acquisition for the Colorado Avalanche, because there's a very real possibility that the first thing they do is go get a new assistant coach. I know you and Justin last week talked about the
Yeah.
potential for hiring internally on that option, but I do want to pick your brain a little bit, E. Should they go get a bunch of players first and then get a coach after, or should they get the coach first and then go after player? It doesn't matter. Could they either order?
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I'm sticking to it. Doesn't matter
Okay.
because of you're talking about Nate McKinnon, you're thinking Kale McCarr, you're talking about Val Matush. I mean, you're talking about at the end of the day, those are your assets that are going to play on the power play. Whether you go get a guy, uh, free agents aren't going to sign here because of Coach X is here. You know what I mean? They're going to sign here because management is here, like Sakic, McFarland, Coach Bednar, McKinnon, McCarr, things like that. The goaltending's solid. And we were talking about Mitch Marner yesterday, right? Those are attractive. I'm not saying the Avs are signing Mitch Marner. I'm saying an attractive free agent is going to look at a team like Colorado. Who doesn't want to play with Nate McKinnon and Kale McCarr? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think the coach, power play coach, is irrelevant, so to speak. I'm not downplaying that. I think it's an important piece of the puzzle of coaching. Um, but you got to remember, Ray had the title of his associate coach, right?
Yeah.
Which kind of helps because somebody else that's coaching right now or still coaching in the playoffs or whatever it is, and he's an assistant coach. What's not a lateral move, right? Associate is an up move, whatever that means. I mean, does it really mean a lot? No, but the title kind of lets you kind of maneuver a little bit the way I'm talking about right now. So look no further than around the league today with they're saying Brad Shaw, right? Talkett goes to Philly. Shaw was the interim. Shaw is probably one of the most respected D guys, meaning like the same position as Nolan Pratt, for example, around the National Hockey League, and it looks like he's joining the New Jersey Devils staff, right? So you're going to see like things like that maybe the Avs are going to look at if it's not going to be internal, but there's going to be some things like that where teams give the opportunities to assistant coaches, especially in places like new staff, coming in because they're going to bring in their new staff. And, who knows what's going to happen with the rest of the coaching staff. It sounds like they've already been like going Philly anyway, a few weeks back, but
Yeah.
right. I mean, I think they did, but I think Shaw was given the opportunity to stay, but, now he's like, no, I'm looking at a different opportunity. And, Jersey, they moved on from Ryan McGill on the D side of things. And then here comes Bradshaw. So, which probably deals with the PK. So special teams, I think it's going to be, I think, secondary. If they probably, like I said, have an idea who's going to take over, you would think.
At least a list, right? Yeah.
Yeah, at least a list, at least a few talks, a few interviews. And remember, the Colorado Eagles are still playing, right? You know what I mean? So maybe that's why you're not listening or hearing anything. You know what I mean? Where all of a sudden those guys are still playing, and you want to, respect the players and that you're coaching every day, and you want to make sure that you're all in that together, which is to go win the cup and the Calder Cup playoffs, and then coaching and all that kind of stuff aside, you know what I mean? Like you want to set a good example. So maybe again, maybe it is internal, maybe it's not. So, but like I said, there's still four teams playing out there. Who knows? What kind of opportunities guys are looking for of teams that are still going.
I'm sure he would love it if the Avs tried to bring back Sly, but
Yeah, I think Sly's in a perfect position
yeah,
right
he's not going
now.
anywhere. I don't think he's going anywhere either. But
He's loving Florida.
a lot of ground to cover here, but we do got to pay a few bills. So let's start with that as, it's that time of the year again. Bet365. Let me tell you, I know you're down bad about the Avs being out, but you can make the playoffs more interesting. You could cut a couple of bucks out there on it. By the way, just a little insider info that isn't really insider info. Carolina hasn't won a conference finals game in 16 years. And that includes, this is their fourth conference finals in that time. They're 0-13. So maybe
That's unbelievable.
Bet against the Hurricanes in the conference
I was
finals.
dying yesterday.
It's pretty incredible. Whatever you're betting on, though, it doesn't have to be hockey. It can be the basketball playoffs, can be baseball, can be other sports as well, as there's a ton of summer sports going on out there. Do it with Bet365 and the DNVR 365 code. Use that code when you sign up for a new account. When you do, put $10 in your account, $5 bet on anything, win or lose. You get $150 in bonus bets from Bet365 to play around with, have some fun with. It's all good. It's free money at that point. If you win some money. If you lose, well, it was free money. It's all good. Do it with Bet365. When you do gamble with them, of course, you must be 21 or older, physically located in Colorado. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER today. And if you want to increase your odds, maybe win a little bit more of the time on some of those parlay bets, that's where Hall of Fame Bets comes in. How many bets last year you almost had, but you missed by just a little bit?
A lot.
Yeah, I know. Every night it felt like you're telling me if McKinnon played 15 more seconds or if this one guy got one more assist. That's why Hall of Fame Bet exists. When your parlay's one leg away, they'll help you out. The Hall of Fame Bets app is built to fix close misses. It's started by two lifelong sports fans who also happen to be Ivy League grads. Hall of Fame makes parlay research smarter, faster, and data-driven. This is not your buddy's group chat with hot takes. This is a full analytics engine. The Hall of Fame app gives you access to advanced stats, historical data, and powerful tools to help you bet smarter. The app is built for the everyday sports fan, so it's easy and intuitive to use. You'll get an idea of your parlay's chances to hit and identify weak legs so you can weed them out before you place them. Whatever the sport, even in college sports, the app gives you beautiful charts, clean visuals, and real insight, not hype. They believe anything the books know, you should know too. So jump in with Hall of Fame Bets today. For a limited time only, our listeners not only get a 7-day free trial, but they also get 50% off their first month when they use code DNVR at checkout. Just download the Hall of Fame Bets app on iOS and Android or visit hofbets.com to enter the code DNVR and get that first month half off and 7-day free trial. You're all set. All right. Second period of the DNVR. Where am I?
Yeah.
What is going on? DNVR Avalanche podcast. I was trying to do it in French earlier and it got me all mixed up. So, look, again, the Avs problems aren't super unknown this offseason. They need a 2C. You know they need to flesh out their depth. And they probably need to do some cap magic by moving a couple of contracts out. All of those things are knowns to an extent, but how you actually accomplish them changes the way the Avs approach this offseason quite a bit. So I guess my question is, before we actually dig into the Avs situation, in a perfect scenario, would you rather build the holes of this offseason roster for the Avs bottom up or top down?
Yeah. I'm going to go, and I'm going to stick to my stubbornness of the old-fashioned way of doing it, which is from the goaltending out. You know what I mean? Okay. So that's, goaltending for me is set. We all know that they just signed McKenzie, which is a great sign. They have probably one of the best backups in the league, that can give you a bunch of games and is a great guy for the chemistry of the team, both those guys. So I think you're set in the net. And then you do have obviously some futures in there with Nabokov or Nabokov, whatever you want to call it. And then you can't discard Trent Miner either. I think he's been outstanding. This is a great success story so far on perseverance and everything. And and playing well at the American League level. So again, I think they're all set there. You know what I mean? And then you move on to the decor. We all know Guliev is probably their number one prospect, right?
Yep.
That's not going to be here. Doesn't sound like it this
Not
year.
this
Or I'm
time of
talking about
year.
in
Yeah.
North America.
Yeah.
And then you have Sean Barons that had some promise and has that unfortunate injury last year. So you're going back to square one with him, right? You know what I mean? So he's going to need a little time, you know. And then you have some veteran guys that are in the American League. Who knows? I don't even, again, I should know this right now, but like the Rosens of the world and McDonald, I don't remember if they're on 2-year deals or 1-year deals or whatever. I think
Some of
McDonald's on
both. Yeah.
yeah, it's a little bit of mixture. You're talking about call-ups and then you had the emergence of Keaton Middleton last year that, kind of stuck pretty much the whole year there. Sounds like he's going to be there. And then, you're going down the road of what are you doing with Ryan Lindgren? What are you do?
Yeah.
The UFA style of things. What are you doing with Malinsky's an easy one to sign RFA style. That's an easy one. That's a QO and move on. And then what are you doing with Lindgren? Is this somebody that you're keeping? And then that's why I say from the back end out, are you using some of those pieces? We all know that. Again, I hate to name names. I don't want to name names, but we all know who it is. And if the Avalanche are trying to, because they feel that it's all tied into their forward core too, as we know, is it doable? Does Brock Nelson? Are they moving on from that? What's the next step? And who's going to be the 2C? So are you using one of your top 4Ds, right? We all know that the first two you're not touching, so it's 3 and 4. Are you using those to go and fix where you feel you're going to need help on the roster?
Sure.
And I think that's kind of dictates a little bit what you're doing afterwards, right? You know what I mean? And then are you getting some draft capital that way? Are you getting some, you know what I mean, to go get, again, you just said it, like the new hook trade or whatever. You get whatever it was, second round pick, and then you turn around and or first round pick, whatever it was, I don't remember, and
It
then
was
you
a
send it
first
to
and a
Tampa.
second, or was it 2 seconds? I forget.
Whatever, or you send it around, then you get Ross Colton, right? You know what I mean? Like out of Tampa.
Yeah.
The Avalanche right now are not in position to do that. They need draft capital in order to do that. Is that what are they using their back end to do that? Are they using their back end to free up some money to sign Brock Nelson? Are they using their back end? You know what I mean? And
Yep.
again, so many things, so many ways that you can fix. But I would go to answer back to your question was from the back end out. You know what I mean?
Okay.
From the goaltender position out, and then there's a trickling down effect on what's next and what's allows me to do or the market allows me to do, or if any, and how do I fix my problems?
I hate to complicate things even more here, but I think realistically, a lot of people like to think of, okay, well, let them do their internal business first, and then you can do everything else. Mm-hmm. And I agree on Brock Nelson with that. You need to know where you're at with Brock Nelson. That you have to know if he's staying, if you could potentially keep him, or if he's just going. That one you need to know. But all of their other free agents don't necessarily have to be their first move. I think the most obvious example of that is Drouin.
Yeah.
I've said it earlier in the year or earlier in the offseason. Drouin's the type of guy where you go do all your other moves, or at least you have an idea of all your other moves and say, this is how much cap space we have left. We'll give it to you if you want to stay.
Yeah.
And because the Avs internal stuff isn't that straightforward, that's where it brings into question what you're talking about with the second D pairing, or maybe you're looking at one of your third or fourth line wingers potentially getting moved out. So my question is, how aggressively should the Avs look to make these trades? Is this we need to get this done now, we need to get draft capital type of thing before the draft? Is this hey, the draft is a good deadline for when trades start to get made? Is this we're not worried about it, we're going to wait until free agency?
A little bit of both. We all know that it's like a pressure point, right? The draft is always a pressure point because some teams, want to draft player X, and they need that pick to draft player X. And for example, the Avalanche don't have it. You know what I mean? But I think the Avalanche are in a different style of retool, so to speak, because they're not trying to go get player X that's 18 years old. They're trying to get player X that's going to help them win a Stanley Cup, right? And that's where I don't believe that the pressure points of the draft uh, are something that's working for the Avalanche or against the Avalanche. I think it's irrelevant, but I do believe that it's things that move the needles are the pressure points of the draft.
Yeah,
And then the pressure points of free agency and who swings and misses, and they don't land Rudo or Eric or whatever they're going after, and then they're like, oh, maybe we turn ourselves now to a Josh Manson, or
it,
I'm just using names.
I
Um,
would agree with you that the pressure points don't affect the Avs directly.
yeah.
But if they wanted to go get a Marco Rossi,
Mhm.
would a 2025 first not be a lot more interesting to Minnesota than a 2026 first? And at that point, they need to get those trades done so they have the capital available for this draft and not a future draft to move to other teams.
Yeah, absolutely. Or is it like, and again, I'm going to be GM here. I'm going to be stupid here. Okay, you're bringing up Marco Rossi, perfect, and we all know Marco Rossi's not going to get traded for uh, um, Lieutenant Brock Nelson.
Right,
Okay,
right.
because one's UFA, I'm not stupid. That's not what I'm saying. But maybe, and we've seen that trend the last few years. Some GMs are like, they don't want to wait till July 1st to be competing against 5, 6, 7, 8 other teams. You know what I mean? So maybe it is that the Minnesota Wild does want Brock Nelson, and it sounds like he wants to go there. Maybe there is a conversation with the Avalanche all of a sudden where you're throwing Rossi in there, and maybe instead of again, uh, for sake of value, instead of it's costing you, like you said, a second round pick or whatever, maybe it is the third round pick or whatever, there's something
Yeah.
sweet in the deal, you know
Value
what I mean, you're
irrelevant.
swinging
Yeah.
something
Right.
together,
Yeah.
a roster player or whatever it is. So is that something that's doable? Absolutely. And you can be creative, you can be everybody says, oh, everybody cheats, everybody. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not saying people don't cheat, I don't call that cheating, but whatever it is, it's like you have acquaintances, and like I said, maybe Brock Nelson told his family he's going home this year. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like I don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know players' families, and whatever it is, right? We don't know their personal lives and what needs and what they think that they can go do. But there's a lot you can do, and the Rossis of the world, same thing. You can get creative, and if that's the guy you've targeted, maybe they don't like him. I don't know. Smaller guy but plays bigger than his size, and
Yeah.
I like him.
Put whoever's name in there. It's just a
Yeah,
trade
exactly,
target. Yeah.
exactly. And then everybody's saying like Marner, it could be a sign and trade too, because the only reason people are saying that's because you can get the 8th year, right? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that's why it's like, but I mean, I'm not sure value wise how that would work, but whatever. Some guys are creative. I'm not. You know what I mean? So I'm I'm just not creative that way. But there's a lot the Avalanche can look at. There's a lot the Avalanche can figure out and go around. Just I'm going to trade you my first round pick because they don't have it. You know what I mean? So
Could have one in 2027 if that helps. But
yeah, and some teams are like, yeah, okay, I won't be the GM here anymore by then if I wait that long, right? Then that's why it's like it's a little more complicated than like Xbox, like we always say, and
yeah, yeah.
and there's a lot of stuff, and there's the other team, and some teams are notoriously known for being slow on the trigger, and or taking what you're giving them and shopping it, and what I mean, like, oh my god, like sometimes it just doesn't stop. But and then you're sitting on your end and you're like, okay, I'm ready to move on now. I'm moving on from Rudo. Let's go. You know what I mean? Like this is it. I'm
Yep.
I'm not
Yep.
waiting. But then they come back and then they want Tiff and then they want me, whatever. You know what I mean? And it's like, man, stop it. Sometimes it's cut dry, sometimes it's not, and they got a lot of work to do this summer. Absolutely.
Yep. There's no doubt they're gonna have to put everybody to work. I'll put it to you that way. There's a conversation I want to get into here, but we actually have to pay a few bills here first. So let's make sure we get that done, and then we can chat even more. As we are brought to you by the official vehicle of the Colorado Avalanche and us here at DNVR in Toyota. Toyota, of course, truck's always been a part of their DNA, and they have all sorts of vehicles too. If you're not a fan of the Tundra, you can always go get the 4Runner, or you can go get the Corolla. It doesn't matter. They've got those vehicles, and they offer 17 different models with all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive. You can also get 16 different hybrid vehicles to choose from, including trucks like the Tundra iForce Max hybrid truck. Their SUVs can take command of the road and on the trail, so you can explore the road less traveled without sacrificing smooth city rides in SUVs, not just like 4Runner. We can get the RAV4 or the Grand Highlander. Tons of choices when it comes to Toyota. Again, the official vehicle of us here at DNVR. You can go find one at your local Front Range Toyota stores, including AutoNation Toyota, Arapahoe and Centennial, Corwin Toyota and Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, Mount States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson Toyota in Sonora, and Stevenson Toyota West in Lakewood. Again, the official vehicle of the Colorado Avalanche. Toyota, let's go places. Once you've got yourself into a Toyota, make sure you're also checking out the official craft beer of DNVR. You can get it right down at the DNVR bar, or they're in all 50 United States now. So go check out Breckenridge Brewery, the official craft beer. Again, love them. I don't know what else to say about them. You're hearing me drinking Avalanche all the time. They have a flavor for everybody, though, whether you're looking for the Mile High City, like for the Nuggets, the Fun Slinger. They've got hard seltzers, if that's more your thing than a beer is. They have rotating seasonal beers, tons of different stuff. Breck Brew been doing it for more than 33 years, and it all comes down to their love and passion for making good beer. So go check them out. Go find them at a local liquor store near you, online at breckbrew.com. You can use their beer locator there to find yourself some Breck Brew. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. I wanted to have a conversation. Got a tweet at me, or just generally to Twitter, from Nikki, who said, I wonder if the Avs are about to become the Golden Knights. Like, there are teams like the Knights that operate at the cap every year, and they still get the big names, still get better. They do that by being willing to make huge moves, gutsy moves, moving fan favorites. And I thought this was an interesting conversation, because the Avs kind of already moved into that realm this season, right? Obviously, the Rantanen move being the big name one. But we've seen the Avs, or not the Avs, I should say, we've seen the Knights do cap gymnastics to try and fit a player that maybe no one thought they could go get, like a Hurdle the other year. Before that, there were guys like Pacioretty, guys like Eichel. Vegas has consistently found ways to make that big splashy move. And I was kind of laughing to myself, because people are talking about the Avs becoming the Golden Knights. Well, really, the Golden Knights are just mimicking the game plan of the Avs 1.0, right?
That's it. I mean, I'm with you, Rudo. That's a well said point of view, because I'm big game hunting. I mean, I don't care what people say. My old man was all about big game hunting, and people are going to say, yeah, there was a salary cap. Yeah, no, there was, but there was also a big internal cap, and that's why the secondary guy, it was kind of, the secondary guys over the years all went down. They didn't stick, because they were keeping the core, which is the same thing as what an NHL team does today in the salary cap era. But yeah, I mean, big game hunting is I thought what they did at the deadline. I mean, and Nelson was probably the number one fish out there, right? Again, Miko, obviously, but Miko belonged to the Avs before, so we'll give it to Miko as the big one. But for their needs, it was exactly what they needed, right? It was Brock Nelson, then it was Charlie Coyle, and a little bit before that they got Lindgren, and so and the goaltending. So I mean, to say that, I don't fault the Vegas Golden Knights and for the cap gymnastics and all that stuff, and the Avalanche. Chris, pardon my take on this, because I don't remember the gentleman's name, but they did hire that cap.
Yeah, the capologist. Yeah.
Capologist. I forgot his name. Sorry, my apologies, if anybody's listening. But and because it is complicated, and they were in uncharted territories last year with Al and Gabe, and I mean, there was a lot, and I think that this summer might tend to be that way. And then the one thing we tend to forget to talk about the first 30 minutes or so of the show was, that's assuming that Gabe's all good, right? I mean, like, Gabe was good, right? In those
Sure
few
seems
weeks
like
there.
he's pretty good, but
Yeah,
we'll see.
yeah. But you know what I'm saying? You never know, right? And again, I'm knocking on wood, and you're assuming that everything's gonna, tests good, and he's going to be back, and he's back for good, and just like nothing happened, and move on, right? You know what I mean? So, and again, if that's the case, that's awesome. You know what I mean? So, and again, if that's the case, that's awesome for the capologists and and Chris, and we're knowing exactly what is the number, what is that you're working with, unlike a potential last year number where you're assuming or you're thinking or whatever it is that you're you know in cloud nine, you know what I mean? Like, trying to figure out what you're trying to do, So I don't know. We'll see. But the Avalanche, I think they're gonna have to be creative, and if they are like Vegas, I think has been very creative. But the one thing with the Vegas Golden Knights is they haven't been really patient, and they haven't shown a lot of loyalty, right? You know what I mean? It
That's
didn't matter
true.
if it was Flower or Marchie or the guys over the years. You know what I mean? It's I think the Avalanche are under a different kind of mindset a little bit, um, and they've won, and I know that Vegas won, and it didn't stop them from moving on from Marchessault or whatever it was, but um, afterwards. But it's always been the shiny new toy Vegas, right? Well, I think the Avalanche approach has been a little bit. I think it's still been big game hunting because they have the big fish. They got Nate, they got Kale, they got they had Nico, they have Natushkin. So it's but I don't mind the comparison honestly because you know what, two of the most successful teams the last 7 8 years in the National Hockey League for sure.
So let's move away from the trades a little bit and talk a little bit more free agency and the potential for
Yeah,
big game hunting there. Again, the Avs have about $8.5 million of space today. We expect that to change based on who they sign, who they move on from.
yeah,
Sure. So don't put too much into that. But when you look
yeah,
at the actual free agent class,
yeah.
it gets pretty thin pretty quick.
It does.
It's not like there's a ton of big names that you can go chase out there with money.
Yeah,
Um, Marner, obviously, we talked about yesterday a little bit. That's probably the biggest name out there.
yeah.
Yes, you should be interested, but what's the favorite saying around the NHL? Free agency day is when the biggest mistakes get made, or whatever it is.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you got to be
exactly.
a little bit careful with how much you're willing to spend. You
Mhm.
follow that name up with Duchesne, Tavares, Granlund, Ehlers. There's still some names beyond that. That's kind of your top five. Beyond that, you get Nelson, Sam Bennett, Marchand, Donato, Patrick Kane. Even throw Giroux in there. And then after that, it starts to fall off pretty quick. So
Yeah.
do you think the Avs are interested in spending a significant amount of cap space on a big name free agent, or do you think they're looking to be conservative there and maybe spread their cap around and their depth a little bit better?
Well, it's kind of hard to go against what they were saying, which part of the Miko thing was, and Joe talked about it too a couple weeks ago when did that end of the year press conference
Mm-hmm.
there. Uh, and they felt that they needed depth, you know what I mean? So you can't walk away from that comment. And when I say Joe, obviously CMAC has said the same thing. Obviously, they're in cahoots together, and um, so I think it's hard to discard it. Um, but I think that they felt that at a certain number with Miko, they felt that they could add to the depth. You know what I mean? Where at a certain number they couldn't add to the depth. You know what I mean? And that's when they decided to walk away, right? And then obviously you're getting Marty back and Jury and things like that. But I do believe that at free agency, I think a lot of teams are going to look at Marner. He's a 100-point guy. And the easiest argument you can have about Marner is, oh, we can make him win on our team, right? You know what I mean? We can make him win on our team. I know he couldn't do it in Toronto, but we can make him win with our guys, with our core, different circumstances. So I do believe the Avalanche will look into it.
Mm-hmm.
Are they able to do it? I don't know. It will take some gymnastics, like you talked about, to get that done. Is that the number one need for me? No. I wouldn't do
Duchesne,
it.
Tavares, Granlund, all play center.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying? Yeah, for me it's no, but because of what I've seen. But again, I'm just one person. I'm not the guy that knows everything. But it's like I would be fighting against it if I was part of the management team, and you know that some guys are going to fight for it. And I get it because the skill's there. I understand the dog in the playoff. You didn't see it, but that's what I'm trying to say. Some people will convince themselves that they can make them in their environment be a winner. And the one thing that the Avalanche have going for them that's different than other teams, i.e., I don't know, Utah. Utah, is going to give them a boatload of money. Absolutely. You know what I mean? So, but does that mean he's going to go there? And I'm not saying that Clayton Keller's not a good player. I'm not saying that Logan Cooley's not a good player, or who's the right shot there? The dude that I like, the shooter there. I forgot his name. Um,
The young
the guy
guy
that what's that?
in Utah, the young guy,
Yeah. Gunther,
Genther.
Dylan Gunther.
Yeah,
Yeah, Gunther. I'm having a blank because we haven't seen them play for a few months now. But
shots
yeah, if you're a
fired.
Marner, you know what I mean. Yeah. No, I didn't mean it that way, but you know what I'm saying. Like it's so there is some nice pieces if you're a Marner to look at those things and the dollar signs, right? Now the Avalanche probably can't get to that dollar sign and won't get to that dollar sign because they had Miko. All they had to do was give Miko those dollar signs, right? They decide not to do it, but they have two things that are very important besides everything else that the Avalanche logo and management have. They have two things named McKinnon and McCarr, and that's very attractive for
A lot
a
of
guy
players.
like
Yeah,
Marner,
yeah.
right? You know what I mean? Does that make sense? So, I mean, I don't know. I do believe he's moving on from Toronto. I do believe he's going out west, and I do believe that the Avalanche will look into it. But
Yep.
I don't know if that would be my answer, but that's okay. I guess that's why everybody's got
Well,
different tastes and different opinions, which is fine.
let me bring up one of the things you just talked about there. If you would think you can turn a guy into a winner, sure, maybe there's something about that specific player that you're looking at, but doesn't it make more sense to maybe target a younger player like a McTavish, like a Rossi? If you think
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have the ability to mold a player into something, wouldn't a young player that's on the rise make more sense to target than not necessarily Marner, but say like a Tavares or a Duchesne?
Yeah. As you know, and then it comes down to assets, right?
Of course,
You don't
yeah.
have the assets. You don't really have a lot of assets. But again, you do have some. I'm not going to downplay a top 4D. You know what I mean? That's not, but you know what I mean? You don't really have the draft capital to swing the
Right.
pot or, like kind of maneuver things. So, but you're right. Sometimes it is better to go get a young guy. Now, if you're asking me right now and you're saying you got 3 seconds or I'm going to, you know, whatever. Take
Yeah.
away a cheeseburger away next time I see you. You know what I mean? Like then I would be like Sam Bennett's my answer, right? You know what I mean? And that's
Sure.
no, are you gonna overpay for Sam Bennett dollar wise? Probably because you just said it. It's free agency, and
Mistakes
and
get made
people talk about Sammy, and I love the guy, and he's a great fit for the Avs. People talk about him as a 90-point guy. Like I don't think he's ever gotten 50 points, right? Am
this
I
year.
wrong? Or,
First time
yeah,
this
this
year.
year.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And I like Sammy. And again, you're talking about a dog in the playoffs and a guy. I mean, I love him. That's not it. That is not it. But yeah, but he's not a $9 million player. You know what I mean? He's not. You know what I mean? So, but is someone gonna get to that? I don't know. Like you never know. You've seen some crazy things in free agency. You know what I mean? So, but again, if you're Sam Bennett and you're not staying in Florida, which I think would be absurd, you know what I mean, not to stay there and what they have going, and I'm assuming they can make it work, right? I mean, you're thinking they can. But then again, I go back to what I said 10 minutes earlier. Number 8, number 29, those are pretty two good sales like marketing tools, you know what I mean, to go and get guys, you know what I mean? So and again, that's a number that's way more affordable than the Miko number. And I know since then we've acquired Natchez and all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying it goes down to zero, the $12 million for Miko that was allocated. But what I'm saying is maybe you can manage a guy like that at 7.5. I don't know. I don't know what the number is going to be for him. But then you're talking about your 2C and you're in pretty good company there, if that's your answer. But a guy's got to want to come too, right?
What I
So
will say is we've done a great job of focusing in on the forward side with this
yeah,
conversation.
no.
The Avs have at least one defensive spot to fill, and maybe that ends up being Ryan Lindgren, and fine.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't, if you're looking in free agency, and especially if you're thinking about moving on from another defenseman, which I think we all agree makes sense as a thing the Avs might do this offseason, I don't know that there's a bunch of great answers in free agency for Colorado at that position. Does Aaron Ekblad get to free agency? Maybe. I know Gavrikov is a name a ton of people have brought up as someone that they really like, but that's probably going to be an expensive one. And that's about it. Provorov is going to stay in Columbus. That's been talked about a ton, so he's not a real option. After that, you have someone like Fabro, Grzelcyk. It's not like you have your pick of the litter of top 4D in free agency this year. So does the availability there influence what the Avs may target via trade versus a free agency?
For sure. And then Gavrikov, God, I hate names like that.
Gavrikov.
Gavrikov, whatever. And you would think, and just by listening to Kenny Holland, right, the first order of business probably is going to be to try to lock up that guy. You know what I mean? Not let him get to UFA, right?
Yep.
He's done a great job there. Now, is it, like you said, is it a trade? Who's available? Sounds like Bowen Byron's packing his bags again, right? You know what I mean? Sounds like, for all the reasons, because he probably has a number in mind, and teams are, obviously his team, which is the Buffalo Sabres, are not willing to give it to him, and you know what I mean. And then he's got probably an ARB case or whatever it is, like that it is, and the UFA year's coming up, and so you have to be aware of that when you make a trade like that. I don't think the Avalanche are going to look at that because he's probably going to be priced out of what they are able to do, right? And that was the reason a little bit why they did what they did, but. Then you have to look around, and that's where pro scouting comes into play a little bit. And this is where I raise my hat to the Florida Panthers and your coaching staff, which is a lot like the Avalanche a little bit. Like you talked about Sly, former Avalanche defenseman Sylvain Lefebvre, right? Does an unbelievable job with Paul Maurice with their system and reclamation projects. Look no further than Nate Schmidt. You know what I mean? Like he's been unbelievable under Sly. And again, I'm saying Sly because I'm biased, but you know what I mean. They go and they move on from guys that they can't. The Radko, Gouda, Cheese, whoever they've been moving on the last couple years, right? You know what I mean, Montour, and then they're just bringing in the guys like I said, the Nate Schmidts, where I'm not too sure every team would have given Nate Schmidt the job this past year. You know what I mean? And he's been great, and because they believe in their culture, they believe in their system, they believe in their coaching staff, a little bit like the Avalanche did with Prater and Lindgren and Coach Bendar. You know what I mean? Where they believe that they could bring him in their style and make him a better player, even though all the metrics were stacked up against them. You know what I mean? Where as an Avalanche, he looked a lot better, right? So I think the Avalanche will rely on pro scouting a little bit and see around the league, like what is it that you can can you fix your holes a little bit here and there. And I think I read somebody was talking about like AJ Greer, like, oh my god, another guy the Avs let go. AJ Greer, guys, he's been on like 5 or 6 teams. You know what I mean? So it's not like the Avalanche messed up on that one and messed up his development. You know what I mean? It's just that it took him 10 years to figure out how he needs to play, and like he played last night, right? You know what I mean? So on a consistent basis, and he did a fine job. That's awesome. More power to him. But that's certainly not the Avalanche's fault, and it's not like one that got away. But again, I think you rely on pro scouting to go get the Nate Schmidts of the world, and I think the Avalanche will have to do that under all the circumstances that they're facing.
No offense to AJ Greer by any stretch. He's earned his role in the NHL, and that's all well and good. The guy has 49 points in 250 NHL games.
That's my point. Yeah.
It's not like you missed out on a great player there.
I don't know where I read that. Somebody's saying like they missed out. I'm like, what? Like, come on, guys. All right, great. Move on.
Yeah. And look, fair to say, the Avs have had plenty of draft struggles. I'm not trying to argue that
absolutely.
point, but saying they missed out the Greer boat's a bit of a. When you look at the actual details there,
yeah,
sure. I don't. Let me throw another name at you just because I've heard people talking about it. Drew Hellison. Would you go get him back out of Anaheim?
Yeah, I mean, you got to go back, and then you got to go back to who was. I'm trying to remember who drafted Drew Helleson. Was that
Yes.
happened?
Oh,
Was
yeah. I
was that
was Hep
was
still there?
the
It was either Hep's last draft or Clip's first one. I forget.
or clip, or you know what
Yeah.
I mean? And then it's like, and now obviously they got a new staff, not new staff, but some new staff members on the amateur side of things, and Nick Pryor now being the main guy there, and awesome gentleman. Got to meet him this year a couple times. Very, very nice guy. Seems to be on top of it. So I don't know. And again, maybe a guy like that, even though he's not in charge, you know what I mean? Now it kind of goes more to the pro side of things, right? Because
Yeah.
now he's been in the American League, and now it's the guys that are in the field in the American leagues and the Lappies of the world, and guys like that, Keith O'Quains, and guys that have seen him a lot more at the American League level, then and then the NHL level, obviously. But you're trying to figure out and put it back together from when you drafted him, what you thought of where he was going to be, where was he projecting, and where's he been, and where do you think he projects now? And is that something that a team would be willing to let him go and move on, and
Sure.
I mean, and go from there. But it's some sort of a known commodity because again, you had done all your homework back then for amateur side of things, and then you used them as a chip, right, to go and make a trade. Was that Manson? That was Manson,
Yes,
right?
it was the
Yeah,
Manson
Manson.
deal.
Yeah. So yeah, so I mean, why not? You got to look at everything. You got to look at everything.
And this is where I know you just gave a bunch of credit to Florida for their pro scouting, but you have to
Yeah.
look at what the Colorado Avalanche have done with pro scouting and give them a lot of credit over the last handful of years. Uh, last year, guys like Yoel Kiviranta had a good
Yeah.
impact on this team in the regular season. I know the playoff series, he wasn't very good, but
No, I know.
they have pretty consistently found depth guys that can be effective for them in their lineup from again, I'm not trying to be mean when I say stuff like this, but from the depths of free agency, right? The guys that often get overlooked by other teams, the Avs have done a good job of mining those areas to find pieces for their depth, which maybe frees up a little bit more cap space to go sign a marginally better 2C, to spend that extra $800K, or to go from a $6 million offer to a $6.5 million offer for a guy that might make the difference in free agency.
You're right, and college free agency too. Look no further than
Yeah.
Malinsky,
Yeah.
right? I mean, again, not an 18-year-old came in. He was 25, whatever it was, and he's an NHL regular now. Maybe in that trade there with I don't have the name in front of me with the Islanders, and maybe you're looking at a guy like that too. The kid from Cornell, the big, the big D there, that came in that trade there. Maybe a guy that's not a sexy defenseman, and
Yeah.
yeah, he was part of that trade. Again, I don't have it in front of me because I'm on my phone right now, but um, maybe a guy like that finds his way in the lineup at some point. I mean, here in the next, who knows, 6 to 12 months to 18 months, who knows? But so you're looking at things you weren't thinking of. Sam Malinsky, you know what I mean? Like 24 months ago, you weren't talking about Sam Malinsky, you know what I mean? And then next thing you know, gives you a handful of games last year, right? Or 20, 30 games, whatever it was. And then this past year, he's an NHL regular. So I think there's a lot, and I think the Avalanche does a good job with those things. And look, no further than Val Matushkin. You know what I mean? You're talking about pro scouting. I remember when they signed Val Matushkin, I can tell you that I was working Calgary at the time. Like, are you serious? Come on, man. What are they doing? You know what I mean? Like, and it was like, because for me, it was like, this guy's done, he's gone, and it's over. You know what I
Yep.
mean? But more power to them. You know what I mean? They've done some good moves like that. You know what I mean? And I don't think they anticipated Val, for example, to go the way it did. I'm
Sure.
talking about the
Not that
success,
good. Not that good.
not
Yeah.
not the off ice stuff. I'm talking about the success, but there's
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
way. And they would be the first ones to tell you. But you're talking about a unicorn in the NHL right now. Now put the problems aside. The last couple of years, this is probably a guy that had a lot of value before those things happened. I'm not sure
Mhm.
where his value is today, but I'm talking about 24 months ago. Before
Yep.
that, you're talking about. There's a reason why they kept him in free agency and let Kadri and all those things go, right? Because he was a key guy that they felt they needed to keep.
Yep. Azure in the chat saying any Eagles ready to come up, and the short answer there is no. It's one of the shortcomings of the Avs organization. Some of that is because they moved on from players. Some of that is because players haven't developed the way they wanted, or I'm not going to get into the details of why they've struggled there, but yeah, that is not really something, an area that the Avs have to lean on very much. Now, that isn't to say things aren't coming. You mentioned Nabokov, however you say it. You have Gulyev coming probably next year, not this coming year. And it's not like they have nothing. You have guys like Ivan down there. You have, Prishchapov. Maybe you feel like you can get something out of a Poland or a Fellhaber or whatever.
Steinberg that we got a little bit.
Yeah. But I don't think any of them have established themselves enough to feel comfortable giving them a roster spot, right? These are all conversations about guys that are going to be trying to earn a spot out of camp. And because of that, the Avs need to fill these roles in the offseason. You can't feel comfortable.
And in your boards, on the summer boards, I remember, just to go throw you an old name from years back, we had a guy, and his name was Ryan Stoa. You know what I mean? And I remember our guys were heavy on Ryan Stoa, and it's like, no, and we had him pegged in again, not trying to win the Stanley Cup. Remember those years of in between? There were rough years, different era. But it's Ryan Stoa, and then I remember I'm like, man, this guy, I hope this guy's good. You know what I mean? Like, because you're like, wow, you got to trust your staff and everything, and then next thing you know, no, you know what I mean? No. You know what I mean? That's like, oh no, this is not taking a spot. You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing here? So, but I think with the Avalanche, to answer the question to Zuri, like, I think they have guys in, I would put in a box of call-ups, like Ivan, you just said, Pershpashov, Fellham, call-ups. Now they got to emerge as go find a box, right? You know what I mean? And that's a tough thing to do. You know what I mean? It's a tough thing to do. So, and sometimes guys never make it out of just a call up box, and then they don't believe that you're an NHL regular. You know what I mean? You're just a guy that can come in and pitch a few innings, and you go back down to the club, like in the minors.
Right.
But, and you do have to have that. Ivan was one of the guys that kind of surprised a lot of people last year. Maybe didn't surprise himself or coaches that have had him, because he plays the game so systematically and methodically, and again at the NHL level it translates. Where a Jean-Luc Foudy, sometimes it just doesn't translate to the NHL level. And I'm not too familiar with the situation there with Foudy, in the sense that how come it hasn't worked out, or there was a lot of promise and
a lot of injury trouble for him.
Injury trouble, right? Exactly. Sometimes it's still a stylistic fit or whatever it is, right? So, and again, you sometimes you get pigeonholed in that box, and that's what you are. You're a call up for maybe a game or two a year, and you know what I mean. And again, that's what you view as an organization. But again, when you're out there, you're being seen by, again, you're talking about pro scouting, you're talking about 10, 12 teams a night watching you play in the American League and the NHL. So usually watching. If it doesn't, that's right, somebody's watching. So if you're meant to be, then you're usually going to get your shot. It's what you do with your shot. It's not easy to become an NHL player. It is certainly not something that everybody just gets out there and does. It is hard. Right place, right time, luck, perseverance, hard work, absolutely. Being smart and trying to figure out where is your nest within that team, within that organization. And a lot goes into it. And yes, development goes into it as well. And yes, coaching goes into it. Some coaches will love you and some coaches won't like you, but you're the same player. It just, for some reason, they just don't like you, don't like your style. And doesn't make you a bad person. It's just that maybe you're a better fit somewhere else, and then you find a better place. Like myself, I found a better place in Los Angeles. Moving from the Toronto system, and it felt that. And even within LA, there, all of a sudden they felt that they could do something else, and then they moved me to the Avalanche. And so at the end of the day, it's like sometimes it's just the way it works. And you just got to adapt and go and prove people right and prove people wrong, whatever you want to take the opportunity.
We have a Flames fan in the chat wanting to trade for Cale Makar. You guys can have Cale Makar if you give us all of your picks for the next 10 years. Dustin Wolf, Mackenzie Weegar, half retained. Nazem Kadri, half retained. Morgan Frost, half retained. And you have to take on all of a cap we don't want. And you also have to give us like $20 million under the table.
Yeah, we'll take concession on their new building.
There you go.
As well.
There you go.
There you go.
Cale Makar, not available, not even to go to his hometown.
No.
The Avs will literally give him a max contract to keep him. He's not going anywhere.
Yeah, he's not going anywhere.
Either way, I think we're probably already in overtime, but just in case, we're headed to OT. Join us online at DNVR.com if you're watching elsewhere. So, how early do you expect the first domino to really fall for the Colorado Avalanche? Are we still like a month away here before action really picks up, or do you think it could happen sooner?
I think your talks have already started. Like I said to you, it's been a few weeks now, and I do believe everything comes from the back end, knowing a little bit of where, even though there are trigger points for Nelson with free agency, I do believe that where he is in his career, where the Avalanche came in for 20 games, whatever it was, if you include playoffs, I think there's got to be some sort of discussions there and some sort of an understanding of, is this doable or is this, and I don't think there's games to be played, like, oh, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I do believe that today the Avalanche know a little bit where this is going. And I think they know how to get to it. Is it through, like we talked about, their back end? How do we get there? How do we get the money for that? Or is it through, a trade or whatever we talked about? You know what I mean? Like, is it something, or they just said, no, we're moving on. And again, they'll never say it, but maybe they'll trade his rights to Minnesota or whatever it is. And again, maybe pick up some sort of a draft pick, and then that team can get 8 years instead of 7, as we all know that when you belong to that team, you're allowed to have that 8th year, which makes a big difference and again, I'm not saying Nelson's going to go get 8 years, but again, you never know. You don't know how they're going to construct the contracts and all that kind of stuff. So, and maybe it's just a matter of like, don't want to wait till July 1st where you're competing.
Who knows what
with,
happens? Yeah,
exactly. You know what I mean? So again, I know Nelson's older and he's probably not signing for 8 years. That's not what I'm saying, but you know what I mean? That's why you see people being moved
Yep.
now in the summer for a pick, because
Sixth round pick or
it's
whatever.
to get that, it's get that 8th year, whatever it is, and it helps with the AAV. And there's so many things. That's why they have capologists. That's why I'm not one of them. I'm not.
That's too many numbers. I like my stats, but capology
Yes.
gets crazy. All right,
No, not for me.
We are wrapping up today. Any final thoughts, on? Let me ask you this as the final question: how aggressive do you expect the Avs to be this offseason?
Yeah, I think, again, it's still the same model, like cup or bust. I think they're, you know what I mean? And I still think they're going to have a good team. I still think they're going to have a great team. I still think they're going to do what they feel they can do this summer within what's at their disposition to be able to help and fix the holes that they believe will be in the lineup or won't. Who knows? We'll see. Like I said, we're saying Brock Nelson's not here. He might be here. Who knows? I don't know, but you would think that you're going to see this rather sooner than later. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. I think they are in just keep trying to win now mode. We are going to finish up for today, though. We will be back tomorrow, of course, to talk about anything but Mikko Rantanen, hopefully, but we'll see what we end up talking about. We appreciate all y'all hanging out. We love the support, even if it is off season. Over 100 of you in here is cool to see. We love you. We'll talk to you tomorrow. This has been the DNVR Avalanche podcast.